So I will, you'll have to bear with me. I've been saying this is my third one, and then since the new year, but usually my co-host Amy Fors is with me and we tag team a lot of logistic things, and she is off for family things. So so bear with me as I navigate sharing screens and responding and doing it all looking perfectly smooth, I'm sure. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Sarah Williams, and I am a collaborative network consultant at Jackson Collaborative Network. And I would love it if you feel comfortable to come off mute and introduce yourself and your agency, if that's applicable.
I'm Angie Guadagnini. I'm with Department of Health and Human Services. Brian, I started my tenure in child welfare by working in FRP through Highfields years ago. Just actually when you started taking over Highfields, I was leaving. So,
well, good to see you. And you're in Jackson, I'm assuming then, right?
I am in Jackson County. Yep. I'm the community resource coordinator at the Jackson County DHHS.
Well, I'm finishing my 16th year, so we're both dating ourselves a bit.
My name is Michelle Pittenger. I'm a partner event specialist for American One Credit Union. Previously, I was the youth director at the Jackson YMCA for about 3 years. So that's kind of my background. But my department does all of our community partnerships. And so I've stepped into this meeting just to kind of see where there's need and where we can help and how we can just know more about what's happening and where we can use our resources best.
That's great. Thanks for being here, Michelle. I know that we've had Janelle attend some of our meetings.
Yes.
I'm not sure if she still will, or if you're taking her spot, or both.
I will probably take her spot. She's
Okay.
my direct supervisor, and she has a couple other committees that she sits on.
Okay.
So she's kind of sent me in to see.
Oh, great.
if it's a
Okay.
good
And no
fit.
pressure ever to wear a hat or, whatever, but
Okay.
it was great to have different perspectives, and she offered a lot too. So
Yeah.
glad to have you. Glad you're
Yeah.
here.
Hello, I'm Director of Community Engagement at Henry Ford Allegiance Health, and I am new to the network, to this network, just trying out and seeing which one will best fit me.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, and good morning, Brian Filson. I'm with Highfields. As I kind of said to Angie, I'm finishing my 16th year as the executive director. Prior to that, I spent 23 years at the juvenile home in Jackson. The last 15 served as the director there. So, and I live in Jackson County, and it's good to be here. I just saw this, affinity group and decided I wanted to jump in. It's something that's pretty pertinent to what we're doing here in our DEI initiative.
That's great. Thanks for being here. And I won't call you out, but I saw Dina just jump on. Dina, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Yes, I'm having some.
Yeah.
Issues with my internet.
Oh no. Technology is a tough thing.
My name is Miss Angie Heritage Foundation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. I probably would just listen today. I don't know what's going on.
Okay, no problem. Thanks for trying to be here. I know we're all I already said it. We're all doing our best. That's kind of how I just get through each week. We're just doing our best, and we will keep doing that. So thank you all for being here. I'll share my screen. Let's do that. And we'll go here. So this is the Equitable Policies and Practice Affinity Group. And we have 3 current affinity groups that are all tied to different root causes. And this one was our last established one. So it's been meeting for the least amount of times. But these groups are all meeting around root causes that the community said they were doing work with. So our community partners, you all said that you were doing work with our other ones that meet are around building trust in the community and navigating service systems. And then this one, equitable policies and practices, we've talked to, like, it feels like so many of them overlap also, because, you know, when it comes to equitable policies and practices, what does it actually mean and what are the reasons behind it? So it's broad and kind of intended to be broad to let the conversation just kind of go wherever. Let's see if I can navigate this. We already did introductions. This is just a quick description of the group, especially for those who have not been to a group or maybe only been to a couple. The intent of the Affinity group is really to build capacity, support conversations between you all, and we have a strong focus on connection. It seems like every group we have, people end up connecting with each other outside of the meeting. And also that really the intent is to move partners to action. So a lot of people are doing great work or great programs, but maybe it's not sustainable, or maybe they need to partner to make it stronger. So we like to think that with support and connection, we can move the needle on the big issues. This group meets around policies and practices being more equitable. And we'll talk a little bit later about the previous conversation we had when we met as a group and what people talked about. To Brian's point, it was a lot of people talking about DEIJ work, but it doesn't have to be. Like, that's not the entirety of the group, but we did talk a lot about that. Focusing on how to partner with community members and people with lived experiences. We don't ever want to be meeting or pretending to do work unless we are centering those that are closest to the problem. So we will reiterate that, and we will bring it up. If someone says they're doing an intervention, we will likely say, like, who have you talked to know that that's like what the community needs. And then my role as a consultant is really just to support activities, to help foster connections, share resources if you need it. If you're like, hey, I heard this community is doing this thing, do you think that could be true? I am quick to admit I'm not an expert in a lot of things, but I'm really good at connecting, and I'm and facilitating a space is kind of the intent of the group today. Oops. And then just quick goals. We hope that by attending, gain knowledge and skills necessary to move, like, not just in programs, but also kind of move to systems change together. It's slow and messy and important. Building on partner connections and build upon ways partners have succeeded in improving trust. We already talked about building trusting relationships with people with lived experience to elevate community power, understanding that our communities know what matters most. And we will always talk about tracking and measuring progress, because that we are a network, and we also have to show that the work we're doing matters. So we get to be creative in how we decide how to track and measure progress as well. Just some quick group norms. And if you've been part of groups, these are probably fairly normal, but we like to encourage people to pose questions, put ideas on the table. We really want to create a space that feels authentic, that is authentic, in that doesn't feel like you have to, what am I trying to say? If, for example, Angie's like, hey, I had this idea about going out to the community to knock on doors, someone else may say, actually, I tried that and that did not work, but you should talk to this person because they're doing this thing. And so it's an idea of, like, being transparent, bringing your successes and challenges to the table, and also supporting each other as we do this. This is just a quick ways, and it's not exactly linear, but these are different ways you can move to action that we can help with. We have partner profiles that quite a few people have completed, and it's a way that helps us see and helps others see the work you're doing in the community and how it aligns with the root causes. Actually, yeah. So this is my screenshot of people that, so this is a public viewing page, and there are many pages. So there are 40 people, and you can see that, excuse me, Terry, the Center for Family Health, is working on strengthening outreach efforts. So they're about building trust and working on the root cause of lack of trust. So you're able to go in and connect with people without our intervention. You can just connect with people. Oh, look, Brian's right on the main page there. Didn't even see that. So Brian has entered his profile as well, completing phase 1, working on these 3 root causes. So this also helps us to see what you all are working on, because I would not know that Brian is working on failure to acknowledge bias and lack of equity and respect, except that that was entered in. And the good thing about this too is that the more people that complete this, then gives us data. It gives us like, I didn't realize that we had 20 people just here, like working on this root cause. Maybe we should bring them together, or maybe we should like see if they want to connect because they have this thing in common. So it also feels like there's a lot more potential to do with this, and we're still kind of figuring it out. But I put a link there, and I'll send you a link in the follow-up email. And if you've not completed a partner profile, that'd be super helpful. It's really easy, just a couple sentences on what you're doing in the community. And it's per person. So, and it's not per organization, because, you know, each person in an organization is doing different work. Other ways to engage with us, affinity group discussion, you are here now. We have action plans that are catered to individuals working on strategies. We like to, and this is like one-on-one. So for example, if Teshna was like, oh, actually, I'm doing this initiative and I'm trying to reach out to these people because we're trying to make this site accessible and we're actually pretty stuck. Do you have any ideas? And someone I could partner with. It really is like a personal, like thought partnering kind of relationship of how we can work together to like move strategies forward. Track and reporting progress. And then we always share our success and share barriers, because we don't sugarcoat things. And also the only way to move forward is by telling all of the truth. So yeah, just a quick there. We already went through partner profiles. So this is, and maybe we should set this, I didn't make a slide for this, but as Angie mentioned in the beginning of our meeting, we had a bit of a, and also Teshna tried to join I think our December meeting. She's like, hey, see you there. And so we actually had a unique funding opportunity at the end of last year that was housed within the Inequitable Policies group in this affinity group. And so it made the dynamic and it made the affinity group very specific to a thing. And like people that were there were doing strategies and funding, and actually Dina, this, you know, was a part of that group as well. And so I think moving forward, we'll probably have a separate group that is dedicated to that specific like funding opportunity, so that the conversation can be really focused to that. Because the affinity groups that we are hosting in general, like today, are really like everyone is coming, everyone is bringing their strategies. How can we do this together? How can we partner? And hopefully they cross over. Like hopefully people that are doing work, like for example, if Dina is doing work and strategies around the specific Shire funding, she can bring her lessons and talk about them within an affinity group. So so I didn't write a slide, but does that make sense, Angie? Like moving forward?
Yep.
Just thinking
I
about,
think it would, I think it would make more sense just because it felt like some of the folks that submitted strategies were voting for their own strategies, which is fine.
yeah.
I think there needs to be a separation. There needs to be an unbiased, like I have no connection, so that conflict of interest we kind of talked about a little bit isn't an issue. We need to have
that will, so the group that I hear, yeah, I hear what you're saying too. So the groups are going to be like totally, like in this group, we will likely not refer to the Shire funding much or like that initiative much. It will really be about people that are working on strategies in their organizations around this root cause. And if it happens to overlap, it's a bonus. But any language about deadlines or did you know, complete your quarterly report, or this is what the state is saying, is all going to stay over there. Just so that we can also, I like the feel of affinity groups when people, and having an authentic conversation. And so I'll send an email out to people as well, but I'm hoping members and people find value in this group and want to stay too. So So the first time we met, pre-funding, we talked a lot. These were some of the things that people said. And Brian, you'll have to confirm for me. I don't think you attended before. I want to make sure I don't say things like, because I didn't write down who attended last meetings. Doesn't matter. But we had a lot of people attend that all talked about things they were working on. And the only way we framed it was, what are you working on regarding inequitable policies and practices? And like I said in the beginning, I feel like that's pretty broad. I would argue that like, it's possible that if you're looking at data of people you're serving and it looks really different demographically, you might have an inequitable policy or practice that's resulting in this outcome. So I feel like the definition is super broad. And also we had a lot of people attend this meeting that talked about their internal things they're working on to address their internal policies and practices that were inequitable, such as getting a DEI assessment. We're going to review and change hiring practices, an equity audit of policies, procedures, job descriptions. It happened to be like almost everyone. I think everyone in that group, we had like 5 or 6 people or more maybe attend, and all of them had similar conversation around things they were working on internally. So this is just kind of set the stage of previous conversations we've had, but I certainly don't want to make the assumption that that is the only way you can talk about inequitable policies or practices. And then I was going to, if I can get there. Let's see. PowerPoint. Let's just get out of here. Oops, sorry. This is me doing things by myself. So if we go here, I have a little Padlet. We can get there together. So let's go here to the chat. So I'll put the link to the Padlet in the chat. If you so desire, you can go to the Padlet and it is live. So let's see if I can do this all together. If I share screen, this might be confusing. I'm gonna try it. So I'm sharing screen. So these are strategies you're working on related to equitable policies or practices. If you click on the pink plus sign in the bottom right, you can add in things you're working on related to equitable policies and practices. You and make sure that you do it, if you want to do it this way, that you open your own link, because I'm sharing screen, so you won't be able to click on my screen. Or you're welcome to bring it up verbally, and I'm a good note taker and I can enter it in for you. But this is kind of the way we've been capturing things that people are working on or want to work on. This doesn't have to be flushed out. It doesn't have to be, or maybe it's just something that you've noticed that you're like, actually this thing I've noticed and my higher ups are not honoring it, or whatever you want to say. But it kind of start our conversation and then see where it goes.
I know for me, Sarah, I know we're doing as a health system a whole lot of stuff around DEIJ, as far as policies and all of those things. So I'm not directly involved with it. So I don't want to like provide information when I'm not the one directly working with it. So
Totally valid.
Because I'm not in the weeds of it, put it that way.
No, I get that for
So,
sure.
Yeah. But yeah, we just, so everybody know we have, I mean, we've been working on this we're like one of the leading hospitals in Michigan that we actually got an award for it, doing work around DEIJ. So we're a leading hospital in that. but we have a lot of stuff that's going on. So.
No, that's great. And I appreciate you saying that too. And it's hard too, to like, not think about DEIJ work in this current world and climate, and especially in an equitable policies and practices group. But there also could be, like, for example, like in your unit or like in your realm of work, thinking about, is there something in place that you deal with, you know, that like, well, okay, so like, let's pretend. So in a previous affinity group, you had talked about like you're helping to go like make some other Henry Ford Health System sites more accessible, right? So like, I could say like, well, then to me, there is a policy or practice that is impacting a portion of the population more than others. People with disabilities are not able to access Henry Ford Health System sites as much as the general population. And so therefore, there are inequitable policies right now that you're working to rectify. So to me, and that is like something that's like in your power and control.
Mhm.
And also it like touches on, I think you came to building trust, maybe, sorry, or services, it doesn't matter, because they all are so like, right, overlapped. And but I would argue the work you're doing around, and I'm not even sure what other programs you're working on, but like that kind of thing, I
Mhm.
think is super important.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is just so everybody knows, we follow all of the ADA guidelines. It's just from a patient satisfier perspective, customer satisfaction, the right thing to do for our patients. You know, it could be like one of our buildings doesn't have the push button to open up the door, so it's not required. Yet we're looking at doing that for our making sure all of our locations have that. So, and then anything else that that comes out of the assessment. So, but
And
yeah, I see what you mean.
you're contracting with Disability Connections, right?
Disability connection. Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things that DHS is doing, we just got a letter from our director this morning. The Supreme Court shut down religious organizations being required to do adoptions and foster care for same-sex couples. So our director is putting together a group so that we can address that within our organization and within the community, so that we can redirect those folks that are interested in fostering and adopting to organizations that will promote that and will accept them and affirm them as foster parents and adoptive parents.
That's so interesting, Angie. Oh, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, it's coming in the next month, because the Supreme Court just put this down just recently, and the director just sent this letter this morning. So we're hoping in the next month to get a little bit more information about just what we can do as an organization to enhance the programming available for same-sex couples, because we know that kids just need love.
That's great. So it sounds like, and I love your example, because this thing happened and I don't think we're going to be able to change the Supreme Court decision or mind,
they're not
right?
even gonna try.
Right.
Yep,
So it's like, well,
around it.
what can we do creatively? And like, you know, vent off to the side and swear a little bit. And then like, okay, well then how can we help support and like be creative with this? And so it sounds like you're developing a protocol that will reroute them. So like, thank you for being an adoptive family or whatever. And here are the ways we can direct you, so that's great.
Yeah. We're doing a lot around LGBTQ population. Specifically, that came out today for foster parents and adoptive parents, but we also, I have a meeting on Thursday. It's a statewide group addressing LGBTQ issues in our foster children, or our children in the foster system. So, yeah, we're doing a lot in that. And on top of, you know, all of the typical DEI work that we're doing around race and culture, we're adding in those folks that we know are often put us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Is this a statewide group? Is that through the Michigan Department of Ed, or is it through a
No,
different?
it's through DHHS.
It is, okay. I only say because
For
one of my
DHHS.
previous hats used to be a Department of Ed in the school health and safety, and we used to have people that worked in the LGBTQ area, and I loved it. That was some good work.
Yeah, so the Jackson Pride Center is, I'm on the board for them, and they are doing a lot with youth right now. With several schools that are forming new gay straight alliance groups in their schools. So we're really coming alongside a number of schools that are identifying those students and providing support.
You said their new gay straight alliances are being formed in like the Jackson County area, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Great.
Columbia just started one. I think Western just started one. I want to say Northwest has a really strong one anyway. Peter Cook is getting restarted. Michigan Center is putting one together. Columbia. I already said Columbia.
That's great. And I think the
Yeah.
only requirement is like, it has to be student led, but they have to have a teacher advisor,
They
right?
have to have a teacher advisor, and that's been the problem for many of these kids, is they haven't been able to find a teacher, but we've kind of helped guide them, and they are finding those teachers. And in fact, Western, they had 2 or 3 teachers that came forward and said, hey, help us put this together. We know our students need it. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to get a new thing going too, right? Oh, plus we're in a
Mhm.
pandemic, but it's
Yeah.
hard to get a new thing going before there's buy-in or seeing value or like seeing the benefit. Plus teachers are like tapped out. I mean, honestly, but,
Yes, they are.
you
Yes,
know,
they are.
like it's like equal parts. Like, yeah, I get it. Like, actually, you probably need nothing else on your plate, you know,
Mhm.
and also like what a benefit.
Especially when the teachers are asking for it because the students need it.
Yeah, very
No.
much. Anyone else want to share anything they're working on?
Yeah, so at Highfields, we have part of our phase 2 DEI initiative. We did a cultural assessment, and there were 10 focus groups. We had consultants that met virtually with our staff and board members. And as part of that, we arrived at kind of a laundry list of things that maybe we need to take a look at. And then that list is now in the hands of our DEI council that we created internally, and they're just starting to get their DEI legs, if you will. But ultimately, they'll take a list of that, and one of those would be hiring, onboarding, the entire HR process. Do we are we doing a good job as it relates to equitable policies and practices? And so those are just, kind of some ongoing things that and then there's, we work in a number of different communities, like 13 different counties. Every county may have its own initiative, some much more advanced. I would say my experience is Jackson County is maybe at the top in terms of leading and compared to some other, particularly some of the smaller rural counties that, really struggle with having these conversations.
Brian, can I clarify? So you, when you're talking about, you're still talking about like the Jackson County area, but like some pockets of the community or some parts of the area around conversations about race and DEIJ, is that what you mean?
Yeah, so encouraging our staff to join in community-wide conversations or initiatives. What I would say is that some communities are farther ahead than others.
I see. Yep. And then where to go from there, right? Because I mean, you have to meet people where they are. I mean, I'm a social worker, so I'll always say that, but you can't like go into a community and say like, all right, let's overhaul your everything if they don't even understand what equity means. Cause like, I've been there too, right? Like you can't get people to understand what like white privilege is if they don't even understand like race. And so it's a wild spectrum, and it's hard to move the needle forward when people are in different places. Is there anything that, and I would imagine if like you're having your staff join community conversations, are they leading anything? Or are they just kind of like, I'm here as a part and?
Yeah, so empowering them to very clearly be a part and to take a leadership role if it makes sense and it's can fit into their work schedule, etc. I'm trying to I'm thinking our leadership team. I'm unaware that actually we do have one in the Ingham County area that I think his staff has somewhat of a leadership role around, a particular work group.
That's great. It's almost one of those things too. Like I don't know anything about the work groups or community groups. And there's also dynamics too, right? Like sometimes between pockets of town that are like so different. But I do wonder sometimes if like they can help each other or like, yeah, just thinking out loud. It's so interesting too, isn't it? Like like depending on the makeup of the area or who is leading a thing or what kind of group is formed.
Yeah, I mean, so yesterday we're getting ready to do our insurance renewals, and so the insurance world is like upside down for a variety of reasons. But as you look at auto insurance, anyone that insures staff to drive vehicles, it's crazy. And with the changes in the law, if you're transporting clients, it's even crazier. So our insurance companies are imposing new rules on who is insurable, and they're using driving records. And we used to use the state of Michigan, if you had a suspended license, uninsurable. But now the insurance company has the ability to establish new rules around who's insurable. We have had 2 drivers that are both minority that have been determined that they have a driving record that makes them uninsurable. And if driving is a key requirement of their job, now I have to make a decision. Can I retain them as an employee? Can I find work that says they, can't transport? I mean, Angie gets it. You're a community-based worker. If you need to transport a client, and now I add into knowledge that, particularly persons of color receive tickets and get pulled over at higher rates. Now, how does this translate, and how do I deal with it as an exec trying to retain 2 minority employees because they do really good work, but they've received more traffic stops and so yeah, so I mean that's a really big issue, and I'm not necessarily going to be able to change the insurance world, but I asked my carrier yesterday. I said, hey, this is the reality of what I'm doing. I don't want to tell these 2 employees that they can't do their job, but where does that leave me?
Holy cow.
That opens up a whole new world of discrimination, a whole new world. That it just is.
But something that we're not surprised with, like we already know too. And I mean, you called it out, Brian, too, because again, so we have, well, I'll just say we have systems that are racist, and we have people that we already have data to show that people of color get like higher rates of being pulled over, higher rates of tickets, harsher punishments. They're in and then we could not even to talk about the prison system, right? But like just this part alone. And so now we're defining who's insurable. Like before, you got to be creative and you got to say like, oh, actually, I feel like this person is an asset because of this, and this, and that the systems that we put in place are actually, we already know they're being discriminated against. And so now, instead of you being creative and trying to still support them, it feels like your hands are kind of tied. Oh, you're on mute, Brian.
I would just clarify, make sure maybe it says
Oh.
new auto insurance rules.
Okay. Yeah, I should have done that. So if my understanding is correct, then you can officially employ them, but if they have to run them somewhere and they like get in an accident, then they're not covered, kind of thing.
Yeah, so the new rules would make Highfields liable, because of, and so the insurance company and as they're adapting to the new laws and the new sweeping changes in Michigan's auto insurance, they're trying to mitigate their risk, and they don't want to insure drivers who may put their payout of a claim at risk. So so they're telling us we're not going to insure this driver. If you want to retain them as an employee and let them drive, that's fine, but we're not going to pay if there's a claim and Highfields gets sued.
Yikes. All right, friends, together we're going to figure this out today. Okay. No, but it just brings up, like, every time I think that I know all of the discriminating that's happening in the things, and I get it. And I mean, we don't have time to even talk about insurance companies today because it's like, good Lord, such a corrupt money thing. But also that because of that, it's resulting in more discrimination. So if, for example, Brian's like, I can't keep these people, I have to replace them. So then like, what happens to these two individuals? Like now, and they go work elsewhere, or it's, oh my gosh, it's so interesting. And I would imagine it's like, oh, go ahead, Angie.
And these are people that have student loans to pay. I mean, these are educated people. They're not just off the street high school diploma, because they're providing face-to-face, real, concrete service for families. And that is, I don't know how to fix that one, but man, it sure feels like we need to do something.
Are there like, probably not, but like, are there creative ways? Like, Brian, what if you like contracted with a group and the people were a part of the group or something? I don't know, this is probably illegal for me to say, that's fine. But like, what are like, do you know what I mean? Like, what if we are creative about it?
Well, I mean, that's really what the conversation was yesterday, trying to figure out what are ways that we can mitigate. I mean, and some that they suggested is, put some kind of monitoring device in a vehicle that shows that, every time they go over the speed limit, it beeps, and this is, I mean, we're just trying to figure out, and our agent is trying to help us out, but is also, trying to find a carrier that is willing to share or assume the risk. I said, what if what if we take these drivers or keep them, but put them on a watch list and, I don't know, we're trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Like if they can get through X amount of days with no issues, are they then
Right.
good? Or I don't know.
Right.
I don't know any of the rules. Wow, that's messy. Well, good for you anyway for trying to figure out how to do it creatively. And I think it's important to try, and I think it's important to because I think the only way we're going to change systems, because really what they're doing is they're pushing it backwards, right? Like the way they're having these new rules are affecting certain populations more than others. So good for you for having messy conversations. I think that's so important.
All right, Sarah. So I was just sitting here thinking, I know as a system, we have a lot going on around DEIJ, but locally at Henry Ford Allegiance, I got to thinking, because I'm the chair of our diversity committee, and we do have initiatives that we are working on locally. So I wouldn't say I'm involved from a local, not necessarily a system. I kept looking at your comment and I'm like, well, I know from a system perspective, not necessarily, but a local Harry for Allegiance Health, we do have initiatives that we are working on.
That's great. Oh, do you want me to edit a previous comment? Is that why you said that?
Yeah. And I can tell you what they are, but like I said, from a system
Hold on.
perspective,
I'll
I'm
just
not
I'll delete
involved
that
from
one.
a system perspective.
I didn't
But-
know, and really this is these are like ad hoc notes for us,
Yeah.
like I promise it's not going to be like, well, Teshna came this time and said nothing was happening locally. No, I promise. This is really just so I can be like, hey, Teshna, last month you said this, but I hear what you're saying. I deleted my previous comment. There's no record of it. It was never said.
I mean, but I could talk about what we are doing locally. I mean, there are somewhat practices that are going to be different because we set we just finalized our 2022 objectives for the year.
Yeah, whatever you'd like to share.
So like I said, from a system, we have a lot of work going around. We have a plan, a strategic plan and everything around that. But locally, we have, and I got my notes right here, we've divided our objectives up in a few categories, one being education. So I know when we first started our committee, we did like some panel discussions around that work, which turned out really good. And so we did that. And then we did a mandatory education on unconscious bias. So now this year, one of the things that we're going to be doing is around some leadership training regarding hiring without bias, something that we're going to be doing as an organization. And then we're not sure what we're going to do around the employee training yet, but we will be doing some employee training. So education is always
Henry Ford Health System, because I'm, officially an employee contracted. There is an unconscious bias module, but it's pretty basic.
Yeah. So we always go, well, you know how we are. We know that we do extra.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then one of the things we did last year, and we're actually going to do it again this year, we have worked with our supply chain to hire, to include diverse vendors in our purchasing practices. So last year we hosted a virtual, I don't know what I want to call it, but it was a virtual event to guide diverse vendors into becoming or being included in our system. So if they have a particular product, they will be included in, our purchasing. If they're looking for a certain product, they'll be included in contacting them and seeing, hey, if their bid wins or whatever. This year, we're hoping, depending on COVID, that we would do in person because that's what we really wanted to do last year. But this year, we're hoping, fingers crossed, that we can do it in person. So that's one of the big things I think that was a very successful initiative. And then again, we're doing it again this year. And then
That's great. So that means to me, then I'll just assume that like there was data collected that showed of the vendors used. It looks like many are like middle-class white run businesses or something, whatever. I'll just make that up, but like, so how do we change that practice? And then you guys did like, let's have a guide, let's have a thing. That's great.
And guide them, and then literally walk them through that process. And also it wasn't necessarily like big organizations. It could be like your small mom and pop, where they could be, maybe they have a product that maybe we can put in like our gift shop or something like that.
Oh, that's great.
So, we didn't want it just to be, the big, large companies. It's like, no, we have, small businesses that, that are still useful in some kind of way. So, so we were really excited about that. Another thing that we're doing is looking at, actually I have a meeting today in regards to including ethnic food in our cafeteria.
Oh.
And so we're going to be looking at the diverse vendors and figuring out a way to maybe, I don't know how often it's going to be, but host a particular ethnic food in our, with them in our cafeteria, and showcase that, that vendor, where staff will be able to purchase their food.
I love that you said include diverse vendors. And I'm not saying Henry Ford would do this, but also like there are so many times that people try and do this, but like the same people are making, like if I made a taco, right, it's like different than actually if like a Hispanic family or a Mexican family, right?
They
and
will be the ones there.
I love that. I love, because that's who should be there, right? Like I'm not an expert in this thing, but these people are. So like, that's great.
Yeah. And that's helping with building our culture, is what we're trying to do, a cultural awareness. And then another thing that we're doing is more department, getting into the nitty gritty of staff, where we're going to do some type of team building exercises around culture that will help, people understand others, in their culture, whether it's around, their special holidays, which we do showcase specific, not sure say specific, but diverse holidays in our staff updates. So that came out of our committee. And that's, we got some other things, but I think just highlighting a few of those things that we're doing.
That's great.
We are doing training. It's called Safe Zone training, and it's around the LGBTQ population, to help our providers with how to care for the LGBTQ.
Like using inclusive
Mhm.
language and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
paperwork and stuff.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks for sharing all of those. Anyone have any thoughts on anything said or didn't get a chance to share a thing?
Hello, it's Rebecca. I joined late, but I wanted to introduce myself. I finally made one of these meetings.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hello. With Drug Free Jackson, and one of my goals with the MODA grant, which is Michigan Opioid Data to Action, is to make sure that our providers for behavioral health have been getting stigma reduction training and the cultural competency type training. So Tashna, it's good to hear some of those trainings that you're working on. I love it. And so far I got a survey or a report from our internal Henry Ford Health System trainings, how many are doing quarterly. We're reporting that. Anything to do with bias, essentially. And then
Rebecca, will you, sorry, just so I make sure I capture it well, will you tell me again the training you're working on?
so right now I'm just gathering the data of what already exists.
I see. Okay, okay.
Yes. So what the Henry Ford Allegiance Health employees are taking currently. So I get a report from the training system, mostly around bias, but I'm also counting ACEs as well because that has a lot to do with bias as well. And then looking at what's available in the community, and then, mostly the nonprofit network ones, the crucial conversations and the poverty one. And then trying to make sure that behavioral health providers are taking these things, and then noticing the gaps and what can I provide or what can I bring in, those sorts of things. So this is a new point for me. So
That's a lot at one time, like gathering data, what exists. And then really within that too, then there's a piece of like what's missing. Well,
yeah,
that's like part 2, right? But also then like making sure that behavioral health providers are doing the trainings. That's a lot of pieces.
yes, definitely. So this was the first quarter that I actually looked at data. So now we're gonna see what's missing.
That's cool. And what do you do with like the what's missing part? Like, is it like, I would imagine there's a group, anyway, go ahead. You probably have an answer.
Either I'm creating it or I'm finding it, through a vendor,
Mhm.
bringing it into the county. So yeah.
I can tell you from DHS, we need trauma-focused therapy. Not trauma-informed, trauma-focused.
I'm a focus. Yes.
Yep, trauma-focused. Our families are, they experience trauma at a high rate. And we don't have therapists that are trauma-focused. We have a lot of therapists that are trauma-informed, but that makes it makes a difference in the style of therapy that will work with these families.
Is that a clinical certification?
Yes.
Is it really?
Yeah, there's a clinical certification that used to be offered at Family Service, but they haven't provided a training since COVID. And now folks are saying that they are trauma focused by doing like an 8-hour training with no follow-up, no further guidance or anything like that. So it's really hard. These families, it really is a very niche type of treatment for these families.
Angie, just so do you, well, and maybe you don't. So I'm a social worker. I am like macro. I'm not a clinician, but I didn't know that there was a trauma focused therapy. So is it like just that place is offering the certification? Because I don't think it's like MSU, right? Because there is a trauma informed, but
I don't know. I know that Family Service offered Sarah Sabin.
Mhm.
Family Services offered the TFCBT, which is the cognitive behavioral therapy certification. Yeah, Brian just put in the chat is TFCBT. So it's trauma cognitive behavioral therapy. Yeah, it's a certification.
So if someone is CBT certified, is that the same thing?
No.
Really?
Yeah, typically TFCBT, like Western Michigan, Michigan State are the two kind of leading ones. And it's a series of training classes. And then there's like a 1-year period of where you need to work and do the supervision. And yeah, I mean, we've had a number of staff over the years. Part of the challenge is once they get it, they now go elsewhere. And because Angie is right. It's once you kind of carve out that niche and now you're pretty marketable.
Yep.
That's so interesting. I did not know that.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I think Lifeways had one or two as well, and I don't know how long they stayed with Lifeways, so same.
Yeah, they tend to leave very very quickly once they get that certification, and they're not staying in Jackson because I'm not finding them.
Can I just say, as like a social worker and as someone who has frequented therapy for much of my life, how are there therapists that are not, I guess maybe that's ignorant of me to say, but like, shouldn't they all be trauma focused? Like, and also like, I feel like there's trauma with a big T and a small t, right? But like how your body reacts to that actually is like similar. It's so interesting to me. Now I want to go like research this, because I'm very familiar with CBT and also I'm also like, personally, I believe that like trauma stored in the body and that you have to like address it, you know, when you're in therapy, not just talking things out, right? Like there's also a piece of the body. So I'm so curious about that trauma focused and like who's defining trauma. This is a tangent, but I blame you all because we brought it up.
But it is a tangent, but it's a necessary thing. I mean, if Rebecca's looking at, you know, bringing in trainings for what the community needs, that's one of the things that we need is trauma focused CBT. And trauma informed is good, but it's not the same. And that certification means that you can work with a family who has experienced that historical and generational trauma. So it make a difference in that treatment process.
Teshna, looks like something's in your mind. I'll just call you out. We're friends now. So.
Well, I'm just thinking because my previous
Bye, Brian.
My previous world, because I've been at the hospital for 17 years, I was in accreditation. And so one of the things I know for our behavioral health area is the trauma piece that we have embedded into the, you know, therapy. So that's why I'm over here like,
me
it's not
too.
included in
Right.
therapy that, I mean, you know, that because that and like what Joint Commission was saying, I know we have a higher standard because we're accredited. But it's like that's like a foundation to me, and that's something that's embedded in with our therapists. So I'm just, that's why I was kind of like puzzled, like really.
Yeah, it's the trauma informed. There's a difference between the trauma informed and the trauma focused. And
Right.
Your therapists are probably trauma informed, meaning they know that trauma out there. And they know you work with that trauma in a different way, but they might not be trained in how exactly that process and that model looks.
I think they are, because we follow it, and I don't know who the training or the evidence-based practice that we have, but I think it is more to it than just the informed.
I'm going to get in touch with your behavioral health, because if you have trauma focused CBT, I need to be sending folks to you.
Well, and it's so interesting. This is why I'm so curious about it too, because obviously trauma informed is essentially like for anyone, right? All of us can be trauma informed with a little bit of education, and there's not really like whatever. But to me, this is the first I've heard of this like specific. I am very familiar with CBT and everything. But like to Teshna's point, and again, I'm not a clinician, so I have that hat of like, you know, but like, it's so interesting to me that there's a specific way. So it makes it sound like there's a specific way to deal with families that have trauma, but how were they dealing with them before that? It wasn't, you know, like I just have all the questions.
I know I have all the questions too. And because we do this, well, I do this every day. We know that the folks that have experienced trauma, I mean, if you've been through the ACEs training, you know, the brain functions differently.
Yeah.
So there's just that simple one thing, the brain functions differently, and that CBT really focuses on the difference in the brain functioning.
Sure.
And,
But
and-
also all therapists and social workers have to be like ACEs, you know,
Yeah,
pros, you know, and so that's my wondering is,
yeah, but there's
Um,
a certification, and that's what I'm looking for, and that you.
Yeah, I don't know if we're not, well, I don't think we have the certification, but I know they have the training around it, so.
So I'm gonna check with your behavioral health, because again, if you guys have TFCBT, we need to tap into that.
And I'm not 100% sure, but I know they have
That's
something
okay.
around it.
That's okay, that's okay. I can check into it more.
And Courtney McIntosh is the nurse administrator for behavioral health. She oversees our behavioral health services. But I know they get some kind of training. Like I said, I know it's not a certification, but they have,
Mhm.
I don't want to misspeak, so.
That's okay, I'll check into it. I
Yeah.
don't have a problem calling them and saying, hey, I understand that you might have some trauma-focused CBT going on over there.
Angie, how did this, so my data mind goes to, so is there data to show that these therapists with this certification are achieving higher outcomes than regular therapists? Why is there a higher demand for them?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that about 4 years ago, Zoe tried to require all of our contractors to be trauma focused certified, and one actually went through the certification process and is no longer part of our contracts. So it is a niche field. It really is a niche field. That's why ACEs is so important. That's why we're, presenting it everywhere we can, so that people understand that trauma really is generational. So I don't know the data.
Yeah, no, I just wonder because obviously it sounds like a wanted thing. And so in my mind, it's like, well, obviously if it's needed or wanted, there must be data to show that this thing is having a stronger outcome than regular therapists. Like I would imagine I'll assume that there's data to show this thing, right? But like,
I'm gonna ask.
Yeah, because
I'm gonna
honestly,
ask,
I would
yep.
like to know that too. And I would like to, if the mental health field is changing and emerging and there's data to show that the way that people were doing things is outdated or it's changing, I would love to know that.
Thank you, Rebecca, for sharing that. I think I'm gonna forward that to Courtney.
Yep, I just Googled it.
Oh,
And that's the official website for the certification.
look at you.
Yep.
I'll just copy that right there.
Rebecca is just awesome.
Well, thanks for showing up, Rebecca. I appreciate your contributions. So Angie, so you said that Sarah Sabin at the Family Services offers the certification. Is that
She
true?
used to. She used to. I just talked to her yesterday and she hasn't offered it. And we just had a really long conversation about how there are a lot of clinicians that are saying that they're trauma focused who have not gone through the extensive training offered through MSU, through the state of Michigan. But they've done, an 8-hour webinar, a 3-hour webinar to say that they're trauma focused, but they don't hold a certification. And that's the key, is having gone through the program and having the follow-up and the continued guidance and the coaching throughout that year, so that you're following that model. It feels like it's the same thing as kind of the MST model, where they have the teams that come in and make sure you're following that system. So that's what it feels like. But I don't know. I'm not a clinician, but Sarah has done a great job, and is frustrated too, because she gets them trained and certified in trauma focus and then they leave. So yeah, but do you know Sarah?
Me, I don't know if you're asking me or Teshna. I know her enough, like through calls and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, she's wonderful. Wonderful. I love working with Sarah. Very knowledgeable. Yeah. So that just totally went
You never
from what we
know. You
were-
never know where
what
these
we
are going to
were-
go.
Yeah, from what we were talking about. But, you know, we can take that back to, you know, when we're, so when we talk about ACEs, it doesn't discriminate. Trauma is everywhere, white, black, Asian, Hispanic, it's everywhere. So we know that trauma is everywhere, and the defining that trauma is really up to the person. So when you say plus or minus, so my trauma is worse than your trauma, no, not necessarily. You know, it's my perception of it. So, and when we talk about these, you know, DEI, these are folks that are experiencing a different kind of trauma regularly. So that the ACEs really does play into it.
Mhm. I mean, that's why I was excited that ACEs is going throughout the health system. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a huge training, huge part.
I
Yeah,
think
I've
it's,
talked to,
oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Sarah.
No, I was going to say, like, I feel like ACEs is there's a lot of conversation around this about ACEs being a good starting point, right? But like
Yeah.
also that it's
Yep.
it's kind of niche, right? And there are things that are, of course, nuance and everything. But to your point of like the trauma I experienced will be different than a person of color because of
Mhm.
their oppression in this world. And so like if someone is addressing my trauma, it should be different than like my mind is wild right now because I just want to be like, so is this TFCBT an anti-racist program? Honestly, is what I want to say, because like, are these people saying, like, acknowledging historical generational trauma of, you know, like, and I'm not expecting you to have the answer, but now I like feel fired up and I'm like, let's talk more about it, you know,
Yeah.
like those are important things. And when I think about who is providing these services, right? Because also it's important that data shows that consumers and patients have educators and therapists that look like them and that
Yep.
represent them as well. And so
That is a huge need as well. So if Rebecca can find us some cover that can provide TFCBT, that'd be great too, because we don't have that. We polled all of our contract providers for that very thing, is how many of our providers look like the people that we're serving. And I have in our contract pool, we have half a dozen, maybe,
yeah,
people of color, either Latinx or African American. That's it. Mostly female.
not
Yep,
surprising.
white, middle class.
Mhm.
Yep.
Well, we've talked about this too before, right? It's
Yep.
I mean, I don't think it's bold to say it's in every sector that
it's not.
because it's how we hire and who is hiring and the biases they have. I mean, Tashna already talked about that, but I'll
Yep.
say like personally within the network. So the Jackson Collaborative Network is doing, we just hired a DEIJ person to go through and look at our policies and practices because our current team is 5 white women. Right. So like something happened somewhere along the way where like I feel
Mhm.
very confident in my position, but like why does our team look like the way it does? And like maybe it should look differently. So I feel like that's happening everywhere and people are talking about it. But we also have to like use an equity lens when we're saying things like why and what barriers, oh my gosh, it's so messy. What barriers are in place to
Mhm.
not allow the same opportunities for people of color to hold these important roles and all of the efforts we have to do to rectify it. I love this conversation.
It's a big conversation.
It is.
It's a big conversation. You add into it Brian's issue with the auto insurance. I mean, that just blows me away. Not that I'm surprised, but
I know, me too.
yeah, but like, you know, we talk about the war on poverty, you know, criminalizing poverty. What are we doing here when, you know, I just, It just is,
Literally what's happening. And it comes back to
Yeah.
this piece, like I mean, it just feels so much like, again, it comes back to this piece around like what people value. And I realize that
Mhm.
insurance companies are like kind of really not people, you know, but like when you think about, do you actually value humans or are you actually just valuing money? Because like the answer is obvious to me. But I'm encouraged, obviously, like Brian is trying to show his actions, right? Like actually we value these humans and their experiences and in their lives. And it actually is not more important than this arbitrary rule that says they can't be insured. It's just sometimes feels a little daunting.
Yeah. Especially when there's no reason for it. There's no
No.
reason for it. And
They're trying to like, I get it. Like, and I honestly, like the new auto insurance rules are really hurting a lot of populations and a lot of people. I didn't even know about his specific example. But it's like every system needs to be like wiped out. Like are you kidding me? There's insure, and it's a liability, right? Like how liable are you? Who's deciding what liable is? Like, ugh.
basing that liability on.
Yeah.
The driving records, are those driving records? Now, I didn't ask this, but I'm thinking, is that driving record from last week? Or is that driving record from, 15 years ago when I was a stupid teenager?
Exactly.
I was a teenager a lot longer than 15 years ago, but was it something like that? So, I mean, I had a gentleman that I had to pull a driving record from 30 years ago. He had a DUI.
What?
30 years ago, one DUI. He was 19. He was cruising the Ave and he had a beer in his hand and the police pulled him over. He got a DUI 30 years ago and we had to write an explanation for that DUI.
I thought after a certain amount of years, they were like gone.
Well, this was before that.
Oh,
this was before
my
that.
God.
Even so,
Right,
30 years ago. Okay, the dude hasn't had a parking ticket in 30 years. He had that one DUI 30 years ago. So,
well, now we're into the conversation, which I feel like in every conversation I have around, like, we are a punitive community and
yes,
a punitive society that decides that if you do this thing that I decided is wrong, you will pay for it for forever. And also acknowledging that people with different skin tones get punished differently, acknowledged differently, get away with things differently. So now we're right back to the war on poverty and all this, I almost just swore, all this nonsense. But like, but exactly, like, and also who was even the same person? Like 5 years ago, I was like a totally different person. And I understand like there should be consequences for actions, but they should also be thoughtful and humane and rehab based and not punitive and punishment and like casting aside because I've decided you did this thing.
And continuous.
Right.
They shouldn't be continuous. Like I paid that speeding ticket.
Right.
Why am I still having consequences because of that speeding ticket?
Right. And that just sets them on a trajectory of a totally different life when you could have supported them and like Brian's doing right now, trying to support these people.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's all connected. Is there anything that I should capture or that anyone wants to offer on anything we talked? Look at all of these notes. This is very impressive. Small but mighty group. Is there anything that we want to talk about or make sure we don't lose before we move on?
There's more.
No, we could talk all. This is why I'm saying the inequitable policies and practices it's so broad and it like, I feel like all of the outcomes we see in society can be traced back here. I do believe that. It's just then also a matter of like, how and do we have power to change some of those policies?
So it's interesting too, looking at the information that you've put up here, that when we have these conversations, there's always something new. there's always there's always something new. Brian with the auto insurance, the GSA stuff, yeah, the Pride Center. I love the inclusion of the DEI in the strategic plan at HFHS. I like that, and I believe that that's going to include races, culture, LGBT, gender, all of that. Not just, it's not black and white. Literally, it's not black and white.
Yeah, well, diversity means all of that, right? Diverse
Yes.
perspectives, class. I feel like I'm pretty guilty also of not remembering, and I feel like class is a huge one, you know,
Mhm.
and intersex, of course, like,
Yeah.
class and race and gender all, intersect with each other, but all of it, the diversity is important. Mhm.
I try not to, I don't like to say, I don't see color, because we do see color. That just doesn't even make sense. But I bet Tashna puts her pants on one leg at a time like I do.
I do believe that's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
The janitor that cleans our building puts their pants on one leg at a time, just like our director. Right.
Yeah, and I think you're talking too, Angie, about like when we and to me, this is what I was talking before about human value, and like, are your actions lining up with, do you believe that all humans have equal value? And then comma, well, where are they starting from then? Because some people surely don't need the same amount of effort to make them equal to us, right? Because actually some people might not have pants at all, right, to wear.
Yeah.
So it's a matter also of equity and making sure that the resources that we're providing are equitable and raising up, and yeah, it's we will always, every meeting I lead, we will lead with human value and equity.
For the GSAs, I've been working on that a little bit. Just went to Parkside and spoke there. And then we're also talking about a countywide GSA. So we have a movie night we're having Thursday, the second Thursday in February at the library. And then at the same time, we are having a parent support group upstairs. So the idea is avoiding those transportation issues, but also avoiding those, I don't want to be outed to my parents or my school, mates. So I'm just going to the library to study, right? So we're, working on making it a countywide option as well. I mean, we're still, of course, wanting them in the schools. An interesting conversation too I had with someone, might have been with you, Angie, I don't remember, about some students don't want to join the GSA because the GSA ends up just being female allies that think it's fun and cool to spread rainbows everywhere and aren't of the identity and I don't know, being real about it. So having real conversations as opposed to just, I don't know where that goes, but yeah.
Yeah, the students that want to be part of it because it's cool to be part of the GSA, but don't really identify with those students that struggle with disclosure to parents, with disclosure at school, with bullying. Yeah.
What are some, have you guys talked about solutions to that, right? Because there could also be like this GSA, we're allowed to have 3 allies total. And we were, like there were thoughts, I get that too, because it's also great. And when you're young people, I bet that probably most of those allies are legit. Like they're there because they're in it and they believe and they want to be a part, and I'm here to support, right? But also you have to acknowledge that people who are allies or supports, it's not the same as being someone who experiences a thing, right? So like, I wonder, and I would imagine that's student led. The students get to decide how to mitigate that and say like, actually, we just want people, that identify or,
And there were 4 girls at Parkside, and they all were part of it. They were either non-binary or lesbian or bi, but 4 kids out of the whole middle school. So
Yeah, but isn't it new?
it's
Yeah.
4
Well,
is success.
it's so
I would imagine, especially at Parkside, the size of Parkside, that you're going to start it and then students are going to see some stuff happening and they're going to want to be part of it. But still, that age, they're 7th and 8th grade, so they're 12 and 13. They will be figuring themselves out, and they may not, I mean, if the kid's a quarterback on the football team, is he going to want to come out and say, I'm gay?
right.
Right. So there's some comfort level still in the middle school, where high school kids are still, they're still figuring themselves out, but they're more apt to disclose to their friends. So middle school is really a lot of education and support.
Right.
Well, isn't the point of a GSA also to just be like, by the way, there's a space for you? Like,
You are
by the
safe
way,
here.
right. So to me, like
Yep.
establishing a thing and having it start, right? Like,
Yep.
even if it's small to me, and then if it keeps going, even if it's small, it's still a nice thing to have in case there are other students who decide later they want to join
Yep.
or be a part, or like, oh, I didn't know this was an option, that I could belong here. Like,
Yeah. And for some of those kids, it might be, this is a safe place where I can be myself, where I can't be myself at home, or I can't be myself in a classroom because my cousin might see me or my neighbor might see me. Where if I come to this group, I can be an ally.
Mhm. And I mean, part of a GSA too is, it can be support, social, or activist. And that activist piece is, putting posters up that talk about it's, okay to be gay, essentially, So, and there's data to suggest too that having a GSA at a school reduces bullying across the board, not just bullying for the LGBTQ community. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Makes a safer place.
There's your data, Sarah.
I love, and I hate to say it, I did know that because my previous work was at the state in the school health and safety unit, and we did a lot of LGBTQ work. I love that data, Rebecca. I would say the same thing. And I would say doing those universal school-wide interventions talking about LGBTQ makes schools safer for all students. Yes, that was some of my favorite work. And I love data. You're right, Angie. There's no better way to wrap this up than to talk about data and how it fits in.
And that's when I glaze over. I'm not data driven.
It takes all of us, right? It takes us all together.
Yeah.
Well, I will stop.
So what can we take away
notes.
from this meeting, Sarah?
Well, there's a lot to take away.
There's
I feel like
lot.
there are, and there are pieces too, because, I would hope that, and this group hasn't met a ton of times. Usually we focus on connection, and are there ways that like people attended today that could benefit? Like we talked a lot about the TFCBT. I would like to be a part of any conversation that happens or resources shared, like personally and also kind of, or professionally and personally. And so I know what's happening. To me, knowing that things like the things that Brian is dealing with right now, I feel like is helpful for when I enter other conversations and other spaces.
Yeah.
I immediately think of like other transportation ideas. So a lot of it too is connection. And then there are always pieces in here of like, if any of you attending today are like, actually, I'm stuck on this thing I'm working on, like, it may be Rebecca's like, actually, I was trying to connect with GSAs, but I'm not sure, do you have another connection? Do you have another resource? There's always ways that we can help, but these groups essentially are really big on connection to others. And also, are there ways that I can support a thing as you move forward? But then the next time we meet, maybe you all will be like, actually, I did this thing, this didn't work. Does anyone have any ideas on how I can help with this? Or maybe Teshna will say like, actually, we do have TFCBT or whatever. I don't know, I'm making stuff up, but ideally people continue to come and that we can strengthen strategies together.
Yeah.
Is that broad enough? It's super broad.
It
isn't
really is for Tashna and Rebecca and Michelle, because they're new to this group. So I just want them to know that all of this is takeaway so that we can bring them back to our own organizations and groups that we are part of.
Mhm. Yeah, this group is really not that old, right? Like this, the Inequitable Policy.
We've only met a couple times.
We've only met a couple times, right? So,
Mhm.
and also being open to where the group goes, because every month there are new people that come, and then the dynamic is different, which is great. And then the information is different and the connections are different.
Yeah.
And what has happened from month to month is like changes all the time, you know? So
Mhm.
I'm hoping that people find value and also open to like switching it up and change it. You know, like I have many more slides around action planning. If you ever, you know, want to go there, we can talk about gathering data. I know Angie would love that. But there, it really is like super focused on connection, and if we had not had this much conversation, there are other slides I'm happy to show around like root causes and things like that. But I think it's a delight when people share things, and I'm retaining this and we'll take notes, and hopefully you all are taking away whatever's helpful for you. And I'm happy to hear feedback as well if there are other action steps that would be helpful for the group. I will stop share and see what I have left. Where did we go?
I have to take off. So
Oh yeah.
Yep, I have to take off. So I will see you all soon.
Thanks for coming, Angie. We'll be in touch soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. So we don't have much left here. Let's see if this will get me there. We already did this. Oops. Yeah, this is that action planning process that we use everything. And then those are the 14 root causes that we have, and we're organizing around all of our affinity groups. This is the next time our group meets. We're always open to, if people are like, this is the worst time ever to meet and I really want to come, like everything is fluid. We just picked a day. I think it's like the 4th Thursday of the month or something like that. So I'll make sure to send you all links, but that and all the other affinity group meetings are on our website. I will make sure to send that to you, but the other 2 affinity groups that are meeting are around improved trust between community members and providers, and then service systems being easier to navigate, knowing that a lot of work overlaps, et cetera, and that there's never any expectation that you're going to come to all the groups, just whatever you find value in. And then we have a quarterly meeting coming up. I just put a little information there. And it will be held like within our council meeting. The council is like hosting it. So it will be a discussion. They want to gather network feedback. You can connect with other partners. It will not be around like a root cause like we're talking today. It will have a different feel because the council will be hosting it. And it will be, I mean, I feel comfortable in saying it will be a little bit more formal than me. I'm a pretty like transparent, honest person. And I'll say that sometimes people work differently. So it will be different, but also important. There's definitely a lot more like higher up things that are covered and things that I don't have control over. I have great conversation and minimal power. I always say that. So then there's an RSVP link. I'll make sure to include that as well. And then my contact information. Usually Amy is with me, and I'm holding it down for a bit, hoping she returns soon. But please reach out if you have any questions, or if you think of something later or whatever. And I'm happy to respond. But thank you for taking the time today. I appreciate you coming, and what a lovely, engaging conversation.
Thank you, Sarah. This is good.
Thanks for coming, Teshna. I know like you're like feeling it out, doing tests.
Trying to feel it out.
Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing where you land. It was great to have you and Rebecca. Rebecca, this was your first time too here. So I appreciate it. Marcus, I tell you what, 1231.
I would like Marcus' contact information too. He was in another meeting I was in, and I'm kind of doing something and kind of thinking I might want Marcus. I'm thinking
I don't know what you're doing, but I'll just say that you probably do want Marcus there. He's like great. Yeah.
I would like your contact information. So
So Tasha, I will definitely get you my contact information, but I like to, so what I do is I'm like going around, meeting people, different people in the community, and I like to go out to lunch. So we got to get a lunch date on
yeah,
the
let's
calendar.
do that because I'm doing the same thing. So
And I see when I heard your community engagement, I said, we got to meet.
yeah.
And she's working on
exactly.
DEIJ stuff at Henry Ford.
Absolutely. So
You
we
guys
we
need
need to
to
be a resource for
connect,
each other.
for
So
sure.
let's do that ASAP. I apologize for being late. I actually had to, I had to run our equity team meeting. It went a little over, and then I totally forgot. I started doing other stuff. I was like, oh crap, when I'm sending out calendar invites. So
How I'm horrified. I'm
So-
just kidding. No, but I appreciate you popping in. We're wrapping up, and I know
Because I just
schedules
put
are
my
wild.
email in the invite or in the chat. Sorry.
Oh, perfect. And I'll make sure to include you all. Marcus, just because you showed your face, I'll also include you on the follow-up email. And it'll be recorded if you want to go check. We had a great conversation and it went all over the place, as they always do. It was great.
was it just you? Was it just you three?
No, we had like 6, and then 1 popped in and 1 popped out, and we talked
Okay.
about everything. Yeah, we
Oh,
had
man. I was just
talked
missing-
about internal policies. We talked about trauma-focused CBT therapists. We were all over the place. We got
We were
fired
all
up as
over.
usual.
we're actually working on a lot of internal policies. So I've been tasked with doing our hiring guidelines. And I just told our group, and I was working on them, and I said, you know what? I'm not doing this by myself because first of all, this is not very inclusive if it's one person's perspective. So I just enlisted a couple people as a committee to hop on with me so we can do it together.
Oh, I love it.
But
Well,
we're gonna make it equitable.
I'm gonna put that in the notes, even though we're not on that slide anymore. I'm gonna put that in the notes too, that we captured it. So that way, next time I can be like, Marcus, what happened? What's going on now with your team?
Right. So hi, Rebecca. How are you? I don't think I've ever met you.
I'm with Drug Free Jackson.
You're with who?
Drug Free Jackson. It's a coalition. The coalition, technically a Henry Ford employee, but grant funded.
Okay.
So, yeah, and working on the Most Teens Don't program in the schools. So we may need to connect for that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Marcus, will you introduce yourself?
So my name is Marcus Gill, and I'm the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer for the Jackson County Intermediate School District.
Oh yeah.
And Marcus
Yeah,
was
we definitely need to connect.
yeah, you guys need to connect for sure. You're doing very similar good work. And Marcus was a part of I mentioned it earlier, we had a separate unique funding opportunity where we connected strategies that are happening in the community. And then we had the group members got to decide the rubric, how things were scored, who got what money. And Marcus was a great force in reminding people, take off your personal hat, think of your community hat. That's not equitable. Do this. I was like, Marcus, man, can you be in all of my meetings? Just.
Well, I appreciate it. That was a tall task, but we got it done. We're just waiting to hear back now, right?
I know, we're waiting to hear back. It's the most annoying. Oh wait, I'm still being recorded, aren't I? It was great. You know me, I'm a truth teller. I was not
Always.
expecting that to be that much taskiness at the end, but I had to take all the strategies and turn it into a state level plan, which I actually do have experience with, but I was still annoyed by.
Well, appreciate you for doing that because you didn't know you had to do that either.
I
But we
did
appreciate you
not.
for doing that.
It was and it was the holidays and Amy's off on family things. So I was doing it week of Christmas and I was like, Jesus, take the wheel. I tell you what, we better get this money or I'm going to go somewhere. I'm going to knock on a door and be like, no, we're getting this money. So I feel confident.
Well, I'm glad that y'all were still on here for a second when I hopped on. I at least got to say hello.
I was actually going to get off.
I know I was like, Marcus, are you coming in? I see your little connecting. You coming in, Marcus?
I was like, I got a chance to hop in here. Attention, I'm about to email you right now my information.
And we can connect and meet for lunch somewhere.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks everyone. It was great to see you all. We'll talk soon.
All right.
And make sure, Marcus, you don't put the S on Thomas because a lot of people do that. So I don't get those emails.
Okay. I copied it. I'm about to just paste what you sent to me right now.
Perfect.
Emailing you right now.
All right.
All right.
All right, bye.
Thanks,
See you
everyone.
later.
Have a good day.